all eyes are on the country's exorbitant cabinet ministers who have been exposed for their lavish lifestyles. Now, while millions of South Africans struggle to make ends meet, the 62 ministers in the country's ruling party have cost taxpayers 2 billion rand over the past 5 years, employing a massive contingent of support staff made up of over 600 people. The details emerged from a question that the country's official opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, asked all cabinet ministers.
The expose comes as South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa announces a bevy of changes to his cabinet, introducing 2 new ministries. He said that while there would be an increase in the number of ministries in the short term, work was underway to rationalize departments and reduce the number of ministries in the future. Last year, Ramaphosa cut the perks of ministers or members of his executive stopping their security at their homes. Joining us this morning to give us more insight on this is political analyst Asanda Ngwasheng. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
There's been so much that has been said about the cabinet and the use of government funds. Lots of criticism have trailed even the reshuffling of the cabinet. Some have referred to it as injecting blood into a cabinet that has failed to grapple with the current economic crisis bedeviling South Africa. There have also been conversations about how South Africa is much smaller than the United States, yet has more ministers, more cabinet ministers than the United States. What does all this say about the government and the way that it uses funds and in the way that it disregards spending limits by cabinet ministers?
I think that South Africa is a very complex, country with complex problems. And so I'm not necessarily concerned about the size of the cabinet, but rather, is it justified? And I think that it's completely unjustified. And I was quite surprised that the president said that they are only now appointing somebody who's going to look at what a cabinet or a government restructure could look like after, we are sitting a year away from the 2024 elections, which could see the ANC not come back. And so if he's only doing a study now and looking at proposals now, when is he going to implement those? Because the ANC may not be coming back post 2024. And, we know and we've seen that most of the ministers have exceeded the limits in terms of the number of people that they're allowed to actually hire for their personal staff, because there's political appointments, and then each government department also has, appointments that they're supposed to have. So, for example, you'll have a communications post that comes, with the MEC or the ministry, and then you'll have a personal communications person. So there's a lot of duplication in a lot of these posts. And this is part of the problem that South Africans have been complaining about. And you also will see that Cyril Ramaphosa seems to be building a cabinet within a cabinet, having so many ministers in the presidency. South Africa has never had so many ministers in the presidency. You've got the monitoring and evaluation. You've got, also not, having the women, youth and people with disabilities. And you've got the minister in the presidency, as well as now the minister of electricity. And so it looks like the presidency itself is becoming its own cabinet, which is very problematic, because it means that Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't trust the people that he's putting into the real cabinet, and now has basically created his own group of people within the presidency, which is a duplication, really.
That's very, very shocking, and maybe also frightening. When you mentioned duplication of certain roles and certain ministries, can you give us an idea of how much this costs the South African government, the South African people, every year, and why this is an urgent issue that needs to be addressed immediately?
Well, the problem with it, I think you already said it in your intro, that it's cost about 2 billion. And the problem is that what we're seeing is that we are paying for something that we already have. And so if the ministry has a communications person, there is nothing stopping the minister from coming in and using that same person who is there for the department. And I think that it's also about ministers thinking very carefully about the allocation, because they do have an allocation that they have. And in fact, that allocation is actually more for their political activities than it is for their government activities. And so essentially what these, politically appointed staff members do is they make sure that, the minister gets, for example, if it's a comms person, that the minister gets coverage for their constituency work, which is ANC work, that when it's time for them to do the ANC work, that it is communicated to the media. Oh, and then you have the person who is there as the government spokesperson, whose job is to then communicate the activities of the minister as a minister of government. And so that's where the duplication comes in. And in fact, I would even argue that the ANC is making us pay for posts that the ANC should be paying for. Because if the ANC wants people to communicate political activities of ministers, then they should be paying for it and not making the South Africans pay for it, because the ANC already gets a budget from the government via the IEC to ensure that it is able to administer everything that it needs to administer. And so it doesn't make sense that, that money is coming out of the big South African purse rather than using the money that they already get as a political party from the IEC. And that's one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with at the moment. Of course, South Africa is struggling and has been taking out loan after loan. And so it doesn't make sense for them to be having these, these duplications. And as I've said, it's even more disappointing that Cyril Ramaphosa is adding cabinet member after cabinet member into his now mini cabinet in the presidency, right down to even having two deputy ministers, instead of before what South Africa would do is have a chief director. So if you wanted a section to have a particular focus and to get necessary attention, they would just add a chief director to ensure that that particular section is looked after. But now there are deputy ministers, there's duplication, which is all about making sure that as many ANC people are employed as possible. Because of course, remember that the ANC has lost many municipalities, and so their numbers of local government in terms of the positions available for everyone are much less. And they are trying to now kind of, employ as many people as possible to the cabinet, to the, being MPs, etc., so that more ANC cadres are in employment rather than unemployed. And so it's becoming, an ANC employment scheme rather than being about what South Africa actually needs, which we were supposed to get a cabinet overhaul. It's a year before elections. We were supposed to get people who are going to come in and give us service delivery rapidly, so that people can, move from where we are now, where people are completely disillusioned with the ANC. They don't trust the ANC to actually take us out of our energy crisis. They don't trust the ANC to deliver on any of the issues that South Africa has, whether you're talking about crime or you're talking about the energy crisis,
Absolutely.
or you're talking about youth unemployment, which is a big problem in South Africa.
I mean, a lot of the things that you've mentioned are some of the points that the EFF has highlighted in their response to the cabinet reshuffle by President Cyril Ramaphosa. They, of course, complained about the fact that there's a high level of crime in South Africa, yet Becky Cele remains the Minister of Police. And they also complained about the fact that Thula Sensesi remains the Minister of Labour, even though about 12 million South Africans remain unemployed. They've analyzed some of these offices, and unfortunately the response hasn't been positive. What they have said is that they have reiterated the call for the immediate resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa if there is to be any genuine overhaul in the governance of South Africa. They've also threatened or said that Ramaphosa has betrayed his own commitment of cutting down cabinet to spare the coffers of South Africa from paying for the lifestyle of ministers and deputy ministers. Now, we know that the 20th of March 2023, there's a potential that there might be some form of a protest, as the EFF has been talking about. What are your thoughts on the EFF and how they've held President Cyril Ramaphosa accountable? Do you think that President Cyril Ramaphosa will one day maybe hit to the call? And your thoughts, especially as regards the 20th March potential protest?
I think that, the EFF is going to get a lot of support because there are a lot of South Africans who are tired of the way that the ANC is running the country. But I personally do not trust the EFF, because the EFF at the same time that is protesting against the ANC, is busy making deals with the ANC in order to get positions at various municipalities where the ANC needs their numbers in order for them to continue to be in power. And so on the one hand, the EFF is calling for a national shutdown, is in parliament saying the president must resign and getting kicked out for that. But they are also the same people who in Gauteng are busy making deals with particularly the Gauteng ANC to get positions at municipal level. And, there are also rumors that there are negotiations that will ensure that the EFF becomes a political party that helps the ANC should the ANC get less than a 50% vote in post 2024. And so because of that, I don't trust people who talk left and then do right. So, but I know that South Africans are possibly going to come out in their numbers to support the shutdown because people are tired of high unemployment, of high fuel prices, and of South Africa's inability at the moment to provide a consistent supply of electricity, which is something that South Africa has been able to do in the post-1994 era before. So people expect that the government should have made sure that, this doesn't stop.
All right. So much, so much, and, in the last 1 year, basically, South Africa has, had numerous issues, to deal with at the same time. But of course, it's an ongoing conversation. We'll see if anything changes and see where this leads. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And we look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you.